site where there is a local domain controller, there is a file server, there is a DHCP server, but also there are some core applications. And you see the similar setup replicated across multiple sites, and there are more than 30 plus sites across the globe. And there is a Active Directory, which is the single source of identity for all the users. And Active Directory is serving the authentication request for all devices, all users in the respective region. They do have a multiple Active Directory sites, and of course each local sites have their own local DHCP servers that providing the core infrastructure services. And also the file server is kind of a decentralized model, and each locations they have their dedicated file share. So the biggest challenge here is most of the hardware are running out of support. So also most of the hardwares are aged hardware. So sometimes when there is any failure, it is really difficult to get the spare parts. So this is some of the key operating challenges that Tailwind traders organizations are facing at the moment. Identity for all the users, and Active Directory is serving the authentication request for all devices, all users in the respective region. They do have a multiple Active Directory sites, and of course each local sites have their own local DHCP servers that providing the core infrastructure services. And also the file server is kind of a decentralized model, and each locations they have their dedicated file share. So the biggest challenge here is most of the hardware are running out of support. So also most of the hardwares are aged hardware. So sometimes when there is any failure, it is really difficult to get the spare parts. So this is some of the key operating challenges that Tailwind traders organizations are facing at the moment. So the team decided to migrate their workloads into the latest supported hardware as well as the softwares. It is not a good idea to migrate everything to the cloud. At some point, you may have to maintain certain workloads such as Active Directory, DHCP, maybe file server. You can still have it on the on-premise so that it can serve your users even better. They do have some core applications, and Tailwind Traders is planning to migrate the core applications to the cloud using the cloud native technology. So those are the some of the application servers could be the potential candidate for the cloud migrations. Let's quickly look at the Tailwind Traders previous migration journey. Back in 2008, Tailwind Traders have consolidated their workloads from the legacy 2003 servers to the 2008 servers. So that was the last migration activities that was executed by the Tailwind Traders. So some of the key drivers at that point in time were there was a major shift from the 32-bit operating system to the 64-bit operating system. And those days, early days of server virtualization, and they had effectively leveraged the virtualization platform to optimize the server hardware infrastructures. Also at that point in time, there was a big push for the data and the analytics streams. So those were the some of the key factors for the modernizations for the Tailwind traders. So now there are several other factors that are contributing to the modernization push for the Tailwind Trader organization. So the first and important factor is that the data center contract is getting expired. So they feel that this is the right time to push the cloud migrations, as they don't want to renew the data center contract due to various factors such as hardware refresh and many other resources. So they wanted to move as quickly as possible because there are several acquisitions planned by the company and to enhance the retail operations. So when it comes to acquisition, it has to meet the unpredicted capacity requirements. Also, most of the applications and hardwares are likely to be out of warranty. So these are some of the main factors, but also Tailwind Trader organization has to ensure it meets all its security and compliance requirements because it does a lot of financial transactions, and also most of the applications today that they have been using for a very long time. So they wanted to re-architect some of the applications using the cloud native technology so that they can do more innovations on the application perspective. So finally, they wanted to ensure all of the applications and infrastructure have the enough support. So these are the some of the key factors at this point in time pushing Tailwind trader organizations towards the migration path. So how do you plan to migrate your workloads? So it has to be a three-stage process: assess, plan, and execute. First of all, you need to discover your environment. You have to do the necessary assessment on your workloads. Then you can plan your migration. So it can be lift and shift migration or it can be workload migration. So the easy way to migrate your workloads, it can be a lift and shift. And then you can later consolidate your workloads once you move to the Azure cloud. So before you migrate your workloads, you should decide the right migration approach and also you should understand the different application types. For example, first party applications like Exchange, SharePoint, SQL, and your line of business applications, your Windows Server role. These are some of the application types. The first and foremost thing that you have to consider is first party application. So the first party applications like Exchange, SharePoint, you can look for the alternative solutions such as Office 365 instead of migrating your workload, which is very important. So second, line of business application. So you have to take some important decisions how you are going to migrate your applications. So are you going to upgrade your operating system or are you going to just migrate as is or are you going to modernize your applications? This is some of the key decisions that you have to take. Just in case if you have any supportability issues with your applications on top of the Windows Server 2019, then you may have to retain your existing operating system. So the good news is Azure supports Windows Server 2008 R2. You can still run your applications on the Azure and you will continue to receive the security updates for Windows Server 2008 R2. And then later slowly you can plan for the further upgrades. Finally, you have to plan for your Windows Server role migrations. As you know, in Windows, there are many server roles such as Active Directory, DNS, DHCP, Certificate Server. There are many server roles. So we can say this is a workload migration and this is going to be migrating the server role from Windows Server 2008 R2 to Windows Server 2019. So this is what we are going to look at in this module and we are going to migrate the Active Directory, we are going to migrate the DHCP and the file server from the 2008 R2 to Windows Server 2019. So let's quickly look at the modernization options available and let's see how to pick the right migration approach. As you know, January 14th, 2020, Windows Server 2008 R2 is officially end of support. Now you have two options. Either you have to modernize to Azure or you have to modernize your workload within the on-premise. Now let's take the first approach, modernize your workload to Azure infrastructure. So when it comes to modernization within Azure, you have two options. Either you can go for the PaaS model or you can go for the infrastructure as a services. So let's take an example, PaaS model. So in this PaaS model, you can easily migrate your databases from the on-premise to the Azure PaaS services using the database migration toolsets. So in this case, you no need to maintain any server infrastructure. Now let us take the other example, which is infrastructure as a service. So when it comes to infrastructure as a service, you have for again two options. One is you can maintain your existing legacy infrastructure. Let's say if you wish to maintain the same Windows Server 2008 R2 and SQL Server 2008 R2, you can still maintain these two legacy operating system and the legacy SQL because in Azure we still provide the extended support, 3-year support for these two products. Or if you decided to upgrade your SQL Server to the latest supported operating system, then what you can do, you can install the Windows Server 2019 and on top of that you can have the SQL Server 2017 or SQL Server 2019 and you can plan for the necessary migration path. So finally, when it comes to the modernization within the on-premise, you have again two options, which is upgrade and stay as is. So the recommended approach could be you can upgrade your infrastructure into the latest supported operating system and have your latest supported application. or due to any dependencies or any supportability issues, if you wish to maintain your existing applications, then yes, you do have an option, you can stay as is, but then you need to purchase the extended support from the Microsoft so that you will continue to receive the security update from the Microsoft. So those are the some of the key options that is available in front of you. So the recommended approach is always go for the upgraded path. We will be shortly moving to the demo. In this demo, we are going to address some of the key challenges Tailwind traders are going through at the moment. So their current infrastructure consists of Active Directory, DHCP, file server running on the Windows Server 2008 R2. They do have some application servers running on the Windows Server 2008, but we are not going to looking at the application server migration as part of this demo. In this demo, we are going to focus only on the Active Directory, DHCP and file server. First, we are going to discover their legacy infrastructure using the Active Directory discovery, and then we are going to perform the domain controller migration, and then we are going to migrate the DHCP migration. Finally, we are going to do the file server migration. All right, let's get started. In order to perform the discovery procedures, there are many tools available such as Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit and many other tools. So due to the time constraints, we are going to use the simple AD based discovery. Let's see how to query the legacy computers using the Active Directory native queries. Let us go back to Active Directory and launch the Active Directory Admin Center and do some simple LDAP query. And this is my Active Directory Admin Center. I'm just going to run some simple query, and you see there are many OUs, and these OUs have the users. I'm only concerned about the computers, so I'm going back to my computers OU, and I see there are a lot of computers, but in production you will have a lot of computers. And let's see how to write a simple LDAP query to fetch the Windows Server 2008 computers. So you can just customize your fields. So operating system is required, and also operating system service pack is required. So I'm going to write a simple query, which is object class equal to computers, and operating system is equal to Windows Server, and then apply. So this is going to fetch all the computers which are starting from Windows Server, but our concern is only 2008 R2. So we can add another filter, which is 2008. Let us add 2008 in the LDAP filter so that it can fetch only the 2008 R2 informations. Yeah, you see here there are 3 computers that are from the 2008 R2. Now you can do the same from the PowerShell also very easily. You can just launch the PowerShell and run the simple command, which is get-ad computer, and then you can apply the necessary filter operating system like Windows Server 2008, and then R2 properties. Yeah, I'm going to form a table, and then whichever field you like, you just choose it and then wrap it. You see here there are 3 computers. And so this is a simple way to query the legacy computers from the Active Directory LDAP queries. So this is the simple lab setup. So we just use the simple LDAP queries, but then in the production scenarios, you can use the enhanced toolsets such as Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkits, Azure Migrate, and there are many partner toolsets which you can use. So we have a documentations and resources available, and you can refer it here. Let's move on to the next demo, which is migrating Active Directory from Windows 2008 R2 to the Windows 2019 infrastructure. Upgrading Active Directory, it's really important because Active Directory hold all the company security principles. So if you are running on the legacy version of Active Directory, then you are leaving the room for the attackers. They can easily produce any attack against the legacy Active Directory and then trying to steal the company security principles. So it is really important to keep your Active Directory really secure. So upgrade to the latest version definitely mitigate the risk. So let's see in action now how Tailwind traders performing the Active Directory upgrade. Let us go back to the computer where we wanted to install Active Directory, and this is the computer currently acting as a member server, we are going to install the Active Directory through the PowerShell. So let's install the Active Directory role first. So this is the command install -Windows feature. We are going to install the Active Directory domain services. Once AD role is installed, we can make this as a domain controller. I see AD role is installed. Now I am going to install the domain controller. To install the domain controller, install -adds domain controller PowerShell commandlet is going to perform all the domain controller for us. So I'm going to specify the domain name, which is tailwindtraders.net, because this domain is already exists. In fact, you can do it in the GUI, but then just to save the time, I'm going to use the PowerShell, and PowerShell is very simple and very easy to execute. So you can specify all the parameters such as database path, log file path, and sysvol path, all the parameters. Now this is going to ask the password, which is safe mode password. I'm going to provide the safe mode password here, and this is going to take several minutes. So I am confirming the password once again, and then the installation will kickstart. This is going to take some time, and I see the deployment is started, and this is replicating the necessary entries. Yeah, this is now installing the new domain controller. Yes, I see the deployment is completed. Now the machine has to go for a reboot, so we will restart this computer. The machine is back and we are just logging back in. Yeah, now we are logging into the 2019 domain controller, which we just promoted. So now let us run this command get-service just to make sure that all Active Directory related services are installed and it is running as expected. I see this is running, it is working as expected. Now let's get the list of domain controllers which is existing in the domain. So I see there are two domain controllers. One is the legacy one, and then one is the latest one. The DC2 is the latest one. Now let us migrate all the necessary FSMO roles from the legacy server to the new server. To move the FSMO roles from the legacy server to the new server, we are going to use move-Active Directory server operation master role, and I am going to provide the target identity, which is DC02. And as you know, there are 5 roles, which is schema master role, domain naming master role, PDC emulator, RAD master, and infrastructure master. So let us migrate this FSMO roles. I'm just gonna click on S. So this is, yeah, now all the roles have been migrated to the new server. So to view this, you can run netdom query FSMO. This is going to tell you that the FSMO roles and the associated servers. So now all the dependencies have been eliminated from the 2008 domain controller. Now it's time for us to decommission the 2008 domain controller. So to do that, let's log into the 2008 R2 domain controller and let's launch the Active Directory installation wizard. So you can simply run Active Directory DC promo commandlet. This is going to take us through the Active Directory and installation procedures. All you have to do is just go through this wizard. Don't select this checkbox because this is going to completely remove the domain. So we don't want to remove the domain. We just wanted to remove the domain controller. So I'm going to provide the admin credentials, and this is going to take several minutes, and then the uninstallation will be completed. So as long as there is no dependencies with this domain controller, you can go ahead and turn off the computer once the uninstallation is complete. Just in case if you have any other roles such as print server or file server, then you have to make sure that you are migrating the respective workloads to the new infrastructure. So let's not restart, let's shut down the machine, and let's go ahead and turn off the computer. Thank you very much for your service. Yes, done. So now we are completely uninstalled the legacy Active Directory. Okay, now let's go back to the 2019 domain controller and let's maintain the same IP address and same computer name if required. So ideally in the production scenarios, the domain controller IP address might have hard coded with the DHCP servers or maybe the VPN servers. As a best practice, it is better to retain the same IP address and the same computer name if you feel some dependencies exist in your environment. So I'm just going to replace it, and let's restart this computer. So now let us log in back to the domain controller, 2019 domain controller. The first step that we have to do, we have to upgrade the functional level from 2008 to 2016. I see only one domain controller exists. The existing one got demoted, and all the FSMO roles has been pointing to the new domain controller. So now let us go ahead and upgrade the functional level. There are two functional mode, domain functional mode and forest functional mode. So you can perform set-ad domain mode and set-ad forest mode to upgrade the functional mode. So now you see the domain functional mode and forest functional mode has been upgraded to 2016. Let us verify once again, get-ad domain, and let's see the functional mode and get-ad forest. Yes, I see both of them got upgraded. Active Directory migration is really straightforward, and you can find all the documentation from aka.ms/migratead, and this is the high level steps that you can follow, and the same procedures that you can apply in your production environment as well. Also, you can follow some of the best practices to secure your Active Directory domain controller. For example, if your domain controller is virtual domain controller and your hypervisor is Hyper-V, then you can activate the feature like shielded VM, because the shielded VM is going to protect your domain controller from the malicious admins. And also you can apply the Windows Server 2019 security baselines so that your domain controller can be more secure. That's bring to an end of this demo. Let us move on to the next demo, which is DHCP migration. This is one of the major challenges that Tailwind traders are facing at the moment. So all of their core infrastructure running on the Windows Server 2008 R2 servers. So let's see how we are going to migrate the DHCP server from 2008 R2 to Windows Server 2019. Let's quickly understand how are we going to execute the DHCP migration in a very high level. So first, we are going to use the server migration tool. So this is going to make your job very easy. So what we are going to do here is we are going to deploy the server migration tool on the new server, then copy the agent to the legacy server. Then we will just install a couple of commandlets, which is going to export the DHCP configuration, which is going to stop the DHCP service on the source server and activate the DHCP on the new server. So once this is complete, you can turn off the legacy server, and you have to just ensure that all the configurations are correct on the new server. So let's see it in the action now. Let's log into the legacy DHCP server and verify the configurations. When I say DHCP configuration, it includes scope details, IP lease details, reservations, and so on. So post migration, we need to ensure that these configurations are correctly imported into the new DHCP server. Let us go back to the new DHCP server. Let's install the server manager from the PowerShell. And then I'm going to run add Windows feature migration. This is going to install the Windows Server migration tools. Server migration tools will get installed into the System32 directory. So let us go back to the System32 directory. You see here smigdeploy.exe and some other system files get installed here. Smigdeploy.exe, this is the migration tool that is going to perform the migration jobs. So let's extract the agent files into the local directory. This is going to take extra few seconds. Now the files have been extracted. Now we will have to copy these files into the legacy server. Let us go back to the legacy server and copy these files. I am accessing the file share, DHCP config. This is the place where we have exported. I'm copying into the local directory. Let's open the PowerShell and see what is inside the configuration folder. I am navigating to the directory and see what is inside. So these are the set of binaries that are part of the server migration tools. So we are just going to run the smigdeploy.exe. This is going to launch the another PowerShell console. So we will be executing the necessary commandlets from this console. Let's start the migration. First, let's stop the DHCP service. Then we will export the DHCP server settings. To export the DHCP server settings, you just have to run export-smig server settings, and then you have to just specify the path where you wanted to save the configuration. Once the configuration is exported, later time you have to import this configuration into the new DHCP servers. Now I see this operation is completed now. It's also a good idea to export the IP configuration. In a production scenarios, the DHCP server must have hard-coded into many of your organization switches, routers, and various other places. So it's a good idea to retain the same IP address on the new DHCP server as well. So we are exporting the IP configuration, and let us save it in the target DHCP server, which is the latest DHCP server. And this is going to save the configuration file. Now this server is ready for shutdown. So let's turn off this machine. We don't want this server anymore. So let's turn off. And thank you very much for your service. And let's turn it off. Let us go back to Windows Server 2019 server where we wanted to install the DHCP. So let's install the DHCP role first. To install this, you can use install-windows feature DHCP. This is going to install the DHCP role. So before we import the configurations, let's look at the IP configurations, because we have exported the IP configurations from the legacy server. So we are just going to import the IP configurations into the new DHCP server. So let's launch the server migration tools, and we are going to import the configuration. So to import the configuration, we are going to run import-smig server settings, and we are going to specify all the configurations such as feature ID and the source MAC address, target MAC address. So this is going to take all the configuration from the directory where we are saving the configuration files. Okay, so let's copy the source MAC address and target MAC address and execute the command. I'm just going to copy the physical address. Yeah. So let's execute the command. This is going to ask the password. I'm just going to enter the password again. Yeah, now the import wizard is started. Now there is an error reported, but I think this is the bug. So let us go back to the IP configurations and see if the IP address has been applied. If the IP address has been applied, then again we just have to rerun the command. So this time what we are going to do here is we are not going to import the IP configuration. So we are just going to perform the DHCP configuration. So let's clear this and let's apply the import configuration once again. Import-smig server settings, and this time I'm not going to specify the source MAC address and the target MAC address. We just wanted to import the DHCP configuration. I see the installation is complete. The import has been successful. So now let us go back to DHCP console and make sure all the IP reservations, IP scope, and all other configurations are correct. So let us launch this. So let's explore the configuration. I see the server options are correct and the scope options are correct. We have the address leases that was exist before, and also we do have a reservation. Let's quickly go back to the reservation and see. I see all the reservations are exist, and also the DHCP server is in the authorized mode. When I say authorized mode, which means it can start it issuing the IP address to the clients. Let us go back to one of the file server where we have some reservation on the DHCP server. So let's try to rename the IP address and check if the DHCP is able to provide the IP address to the file server. So I'm going to run the ipconfig/renew commandlets. As long as I get the IP address from the DHCP server, we are 100% sure that the DHCP server is exactly functioning as expected. those are the simple steps you can easily follow in order to migrate your core infrastructure workloads from the legacy server to the latest Windows server. So in Tailwind Trader scenarios, they have to execute the similar exercise across all the various sites that they have. You can also find very useful documentations and additional resources in the TechNet gallery that will definitely help you to succeed in the migration journey. That's bring to an end of this demo. In the next demo, we will look at some of the file server migration scenarios. So one of the challenges that Tailwind Trader is facing at the moment is that all the file servers are running on the legacy Windows server. So in this demo, we will see how are we going to migrate them into the Windows Server 2019 by using the fantastic tool which is Storage Migration Services. Let us understand what is storage migration service. The storage migration service is the migration service which is part of the Windows Server 2019 operating system. You can see this from the admin center, Windows Server 2019 admin center. So it's a graphical tool that will allow you to take an inventory of your file server, and it can help you to easily migrate the file server from the legacy server to the new destination. The great thing about the storage migration service is that it can migrate your local user accounts, local groups from the legacy server to the new destination. From the supportability perspective, it can support the Windows file share, it can support the Linux file share, and also it can allow you to easily integrate your file server with the Azure file services. So let's see it in the action now. Let's log into the Windows Server 2008 file server, and we will have a quick walkthrough about the file server configuration. And this is the FS1, which is the legacy file server. And let's open the server manager and see what's inside here. And I see a lot of shares here: data, HR, finance. And if I go to the data permission, I see a break glass administrator group which is added into the data share. And let me open the another file share, which is let's see, HR. And HR, you see here there are separate set of permissions like a local HR. This is a local group. Basically this is coming from the local group. Let us look at the local users and groups configurations and see the list of groups and local user accounts exist in this file server. If you see here, there is a local finance, local HR, local marketing, local sales. This is the local group which is exist on the local computer, and this is not the Active Directory group, this is the local group. And if you go back to the user account, in user account I see here there is a break glass administrator and there is administrator. These are the local user accounts. And now let's go back to the file share and look at the configurations and how the folder structure is exist now. And now let's try to migrate this file share from the legacy server to the new 2019 server. Okay, now let us log into the 2019 server, and I'm going to launch the admin center. Admin center you can access through the browser. Of course, you need to install the admin center agent on the Windows 2019 server. So I'm going to access my file server. FS2 is the new file server, which is the 2019 file server. So let's initialize the disk first, because as of now nothing is configured. Let's make this as a data drive. I'm gonna choose some drive and then data, say submit. Now the disk is getting initialized. Let's go back to the admin center. I'm going to use DHCP2 as my orchestrator, because this is going to facilitate the Windows file server migration between the legacy and the new server. Let's install the storage migration service on this server. So I see storage migration service is successfully installed. Now we have to create a job. So this is going to be a three-stage process. First, we are going to take an inventory, and then we are going to transfer the data, and finally we are going to perform the cutover. So let's create a job here. So before you start the inventory, you have to provide the necessary admin credentials so that you can add the necessary devices. So I'm going to add the admin credentials now. So now let's add the devices. The devices are nothing but a file server. In this case, the source device is nothing but a source machine, which is a legacy machine, fs1.tailwindtraders.net. I'm going to activate scan. When I activate the scan, it is going to discover the file shares. So it is going to list out the list of shares exist and the size and the permissions, everything it is going to discover in this process. So once the inventory is complete, now this is time for us to add the target device. So the target device in this case, it is going to be fs2.tailwindtraders.net, and I'm going to add the target device here. So this is the place where you can define the destination device and the target mapping details here. For example, in this case, this is going to tell us the list of file share which we wanted to migrate. But in case if you wish to exclude any shares, you can definitely do it from here. So just for a testing, I'm going to uncheck the test share because I don't want to migrate the test share here. So here you can do some validation checks just to make sure that your files are not modified during the transit. Also, you can specify how long the migration can run. So those are some of the transfer specific settings which you can define here. If you scroll down a little bit, you can also find some other settings like a number of times that files can retry. Just in case if there is any transit error, you can define how many times it can do the retry. All such settings you can define here, and just you can go ahead and do the validation. As part of this validation, this is just going to make sure that you have all the credentials, right? Just validating the source address, destination address, source credentials, destination credentials, all such validation, it's going to happen, and this is going to take some time. And then once the validation is complete, now we can kick off the transfer process. The transfer operation definitely takes longer time because it depends on the number of files that you have. I see the transfer operation is started, and you can definitely monitor the logs. You can look at the transfer logs, you can look at the error logs, you can look at the migrated user logs, all informations which you can find here. So I see some warnings because probably those files are used by system, or maybe the files are open. So all such warnings you can find here, and in case if you see something is definitely required, and you can take a corrective action. Let's look at the migrated user logs, and you see here the users are getting migrated, such as administrator, guest account, break glass account, all the local accounts getting migrated now. Let's look at the migrated groups logs. Here you can find local sales, local marketing, local finance, local HR. All the groups have been migrated, and you see the source SID, target SID, all information you can find in this migration log. And this is very simple. You really no need any separate migration tool to migrate the SID objects. You can just use the storage migration wizard, which will help you to migrate the local groups and local user accounts. Okay, I see the transfer operation is complete. Now it is time for us to do the cutover. When we do the cutover, you can actually swap the IP addresses, you can swap the computer name, and this target server is going to be acting as a production. So let's do the cutover. Let's provide the IP address. Let's choose a computer name. We'll give FS1 old. So this is going to rename the source computer server after the cutover. Let's validate quickly, and once the validation is success, we see the cutover operation kickstart. So during the steps, this is going to change the IP address, computer name of the source server, and once this operation is complete, the new file server will be active. So I see the setup is complete now, and this wizard also give you an option in case if you wish to set up the Azure File Sync. So Azure File Sync can help you to centralize your file shares. As you know, Azure File Share is the serverless file share solution that is offered by Azure Storage Account. So using the Azure File Sync, you can sync your on-premise file server into the Azure File Share. So it can be the centralized file share where you can apply the backup, retention policies, and so on. So while your on-premise version just act as a cache to improve the overall performance. So that's all about the Azure File Sync and Azure File Services. Let's quickly recap on the storage migration. So this is a three-step process. First, we have to do the inventory, and then we have to do the transfer, and then finally we do the cutover. So that's pretty much about the storage migration, and you can follow the same procedures for all other sites if required. If you wish to learn more about the storage migration services, you can definitely visit aka.ms/sms overview. And that's bring to an end of this demo. Now let's quickly recap what we have discussed in this module so far. First, we look at the discovery procedures, how to run the LDAP query on the Active Directory to find the legacy domain controllers. And then we have gone through the domain controller migration procedures. And then we have discussed about the DHCP migration procedures. And then finally, we did the file server migration using the storage migration services. As a closing note, I like to convey this message. If you have any servers which is running on the Windows Server 2008, then you should understand that end of support bring a lot of concerns. First, you will no longer receive the security updates. Then your infrastructure cannot meet the regulatory requirements. And then if you wish to purchase additional support which is going to cost additional money. Finally, you are going to miss the greater innovation that are taking place across the world. So let's make use of these simple migration services to modernize your server infrastructure. Thank you very much for your patience. I really appreciate your time. In the next few minutes, I will take up any questions if you have. Thank you very much. Hello everyone. Welcome back to this webinar, Migrating Server Infrastructure. My name is Anthony, Azure Technical Trainer at Microsoft. In this module, we are going to look at some of the key scenarios about integrating cloud technologies. This is part of the modernizing server infrastructure learning path. Here we are going to see how are we going to connect Windows Server infrastructure with Azure Cloud Services using the Azure Hybrid Services. Before we start, let's quickly go through the session agenda. First, let's have an understanding about hybrid cloud services. What are the different approach that you can use using the Azure Cloud Services? Then we will look at some of the key challenges that Tailwind traders are facing at the moment and how Azure Cloud Services, the hybrid cloud approach, is going to solve the problem. Later, we will see how you can connect your server infrastructure using Windows Admin Center with Azure Cloud Services. Finally, we will see how you can manage your server infrastructure using the Azure Hybrid Cloud Services. Alright, let's get started. Once again, this is scenario-based learning. We will be using Tailwind Traders infrastructure as a reference. In the previous module, we have seen how Tailwind Traders modernized their infrastructure from 2008 R2 to Windows Server 2019. So as of now, they are running on the Windows Server 2019 infrastructure. So now Tailwind Traders decided to implement Azure Hybrid technologies to effectively manage and extend their on-premise environment into the Azure Cloud Services. So in this module, we are going to focus on three different hybrid approaches. First, Azure Site Recovery to meet their DR requirements. Then we will look at the update management. So how Tailwind Traders going to manage their software updates for the virtual machines that are running on the Azure platform. Finally, we will look at the Azure File Sync services. So how Tailwind Traders is going to integrate the on-prem file server with the Azure File Sync services to centralize the file server infrastructure. Alright, let's deep dive further. Let's first get a clear understanding about the hybrid cloud approach. Because many of our customers often think that Azure Stack is the only solution that provides the hybrid cloud options. The answer is definitely no. Azure Stack is great, Let's take an example of Exchange messaging solution. In the Exchange solution, you have an option to maintain the hybrid cloud approach, which means your service can be located partially at on-premise and also the cloud. So eventually your solution could accommodate placing a mailbox at the on-premise as well as the Office 365. So that's the clear example for the hybrid cloud approach. So now this functionality is getting expanded across multiple services such as your file server solution, software update management solution, your DR solution, and so on. Now, why customers are choosing the hybrid cloud approach? Because this is going to solve many challenges. For example, backing up your on-premise environment could be very complex and adding a lot of cost. Also, you may have to meet some data residency requirement for certain applications. In such scenarios, you can place certain applications within your on-premise, especially some financial applications. If you have any data residency requirements, you can definitely host it in the on-premises. Also, maintaining the huge on-prem infrastructure is definitely adding a lot of cost and a lot of administrative overhead. So choosing the hybrid cloud approach could be the right fit for many organizations. So that eventually brings consistent experience. So now let's see what are the challenges that Tailwind traders are facing at the moment and why they are planning to go for the hybrid cloud approach. First, Tailwind traders wants to make sure that their applications are backed up regularly. Also, the DR has to be properly configured. So in the event of any failures on the primary site, they can easily cut over into the DR site and they can recover the necessary services so that their operations won't get affected. So when it comes to backup and recovery, they don't want to maintain a complex backup infrastructure at the on-premise because that is going to add a lot of complexities and other dependencies. So the next biggest challenge is they have a service which is located across various sites, and they do have many servers at the on-premise and they do have many servers at the Azure cloud. So they wanted to ensure that the software updates are getting installed on time across all the devices, and also they wanted to have a unified approach when it comes to the patch management. And finally, they need to ensure that the file servers are replicated into the central locations so that in case any failures that triggered on the local file server, they can still easily swap the local file server with the new servers without much worrying about the data recovery. Also, capacity is another concern, so they don't want to worrying about buying the new hardware, acquiring new storage. So they wanted to leverage the cloud tiering principles so that they can optimize their storage usage very effectively. So those are the some of the major challenges that Tailwind trader organizations are facing at the moment. And now we will see how our hybrid cloud approach is going to solve those problems for the Tailwind trader organization. To manage a hybrid cloud approach, we will be using a tool which is Windows Admin Center. Let's quickly understand what is Windows Admin Center. So Windows Admin Center is a web-based remote management tool which will allow you to easily connect your server infrastructure with Azure Cloud Services to gain more hybrid cloud approach benefits. All you have to do here is you can just download the Admin Center installation binaries and you can install it on the Windows Server 2019. So your Admin Center will be ready within a minute. All you have to do is you can access the Admin Center using the browser. So you can see here all the services within the Admin Center. Even this is going to be the one console where you can manage everything, including your legacy servers. Also, this is supported for the Azure Stack HCI. You can still manage your Azure Stack infrastructure from the Windows Admin Center. So the greatest advantages of using the Windows Admin Center, it is going to bring the real hybrid experience. So what you can do here is you can connect your various Azure services from the Windows Admin Center. For example, if you wish to integrate your file server with Azure Files, you can very easily do it from the Windows Admin Center. So Our Tailwind Traders organizations also decided to use the Windows Admin Center as a centralized management tool. So since it has easy benefits of connecting the Azure Cloud Services from the on-premise Windows servers, so that's what we are going to look at it today. So Windows Admin Center is going to be our centralized admin tool for all our requirements. Let's move on to the first demo, which is Azure Site Recovery. So before we start, let us understand what are the common challenges typically organizations will go through when it comes to the DR solution. So some of the common challenges, it could be cost, it could be setting up the complexity, and also the initial replication time. And there are many other common challenges typically organization will go through. Now, how does Tailwind Traders solve their challenges with the current disaster recovery strategy using the Azure Site Recovery? As you know, there are many ways to set up the DR sites, and let's try to understand how does Azure Site Recovery it is going to help the organizations. So from the cost perspective, setting up the own data center, definitely this is going to be an expensive solution. And you know, Tailwind Trader strategy is going to close down all the data centers where the contracts are getting expired. So moving towards the cloud-based DR solution could be the right choice for the Tailwind Traders at this point in time. Also, when it comes to the complexity and flexibility, Azure Site Recovery it's providing a great interface which is simplify the DR operations. You can easily monitor your workloads, you can easily monitor your protection status for the virtual machines, and you can easily perform the failover and failback operations. And when it comes to the replication, sometimes the initial replications may take a lot of time, especially if you are having terabytes of data and you are having very weaker internet link, then definitely the replication time it's going to take a lot of time. So we are going to see how the Windows Admin Center and the Azure Site Recovery is going to help you to solve these problems. And finally, Tailwind Traders operating from various countries, 30 different locations. So definitely this is a great choice to have a DR solution which is closer to the region where they are operating. So at any circumstances, choosing the Azure Site Recovery as a DR solution, it is going to be the obvious win. So let's move on to the demo and look at the Azure Site Recovery, how to set up the Azure Site Recovery. In this demo, we are going to see how you can configure Azure Site Recovery from the Windows Admin Center. You no need to go to the Azure portal to configure it. You can do it from the Windows Admin Center. Also, we will have a high-level walkthrough around the Windows Admin Center, and then later we are going to show you how to replicate your on-premise VM to the Azure Site Recovery and how to ensure your VMs are protected, how do you do the failover and so on. So let's jump into the demo now. This is the Windows Admin Center. You can access the Windows Admin Center through the web browser. By default, this component doesn't comes with the Windows Server 2019, and there is an installer which is separately available, which you have to download and install it on your Windows Server machine. So the good thing about Windows Server Admin Center is that you can manage multiple servers from one console. So in fact, if you look at here, there is a Hyper-V 01.tailwindtraders.local. That's my Hyper-V server, but actually this tool is installed on the another management server where I have installed this Windows Server Admin Center tool. So in case if you have used this tool before, which is good, in case if you haven't used, then I suggest you can download the tool today and you can just explore this tool. This is going to make your life very easy because there is no additional cost involved. You can just, this is completely free and you can just download the plugin and install it on the Windows Server 2019 machine. So from the hybrid perspective, you see here there is a Azure Hybrid Services, Azure Backup Services, Azure File Sync Services, which means you can manage the Azure services from your Windows Server Admin Center. You really no need to go to the Azure portal and configure it. You can simply manage it from your Windows Server on-premise servers. So that's a great thing about the Windows Server 2019. Now let me explain what I have done here so far. I have installed the Windows Admin Center and registered this server with my Azure subscription. Also, I have installed few VMs on top of my Hyper-V servers. Now I have enabled the replication for one virtual machine using the Azure Site Recovery. All I had to do here is I just did it everything from the Windows Admin Center. There was no need to visit the Azure portal to create any resources such as virtual network or resource groups or any other resources. So I just wanted to convey a few things. Some of my customer often ask me how this is different from the RSAT, or is it a replacement of RSAT tools? So the answer is definitely no. RSAT, mainly we use it for the traditional Microsoft Management Console based applications, and this is mainly optimized for the Windows Server 2019 along with the hybrid cloud scenarios. I'm going to show you now what we can do from the Windows Admin Center to configure the Azure Site Recovery. Let's go to the virtual machine and look at the inventory now. I see here application 1 is already protected, which means Azure Site Recovery is already configured. So let's do the same replication for the application 2, and let's click on the protect VM, and this is going to ask Azure dependencies such as a storage account, which storage account you wanted to use, which resource group you wanted to use, all those details it's going to ask here. If you wish to create a new account, you can create a new account, or if you wish to use the existing storage account, you can use here. So I'm not going to activate the VM level replication now because it is going to take a lot of time. So app01 is already protected because I have activated the replication long back. And let us click on the protection status, and this is going to take us to the Azure Site Recovery. And in the Site Recovery, if you look at here, the replication status is healthy. In case if you have any replication related error, you will see some unhealthy status here. So let us open the app01 configuration and see what is inside here. You see here there is a warning. You need to configure the virtual machine resource group before doing the failover. So let us click on the warning message here. So these are some of the target parameters that you have to define before the failover. Basically, you are choosing what will be your VM size, what will be the computer name, what will be the target network, and so on. So this has to be specified before you do the failover operations. So let us go back to the application 1 and look at the failover options. So there are 3 options you see here: planned failover, failover, and test failover. So let's take example test failover. So the test failover, you can run test failover to validate your replication and disaster recovery strategy without any data loss or any downtime. So the test failover doesn't impact your ongoing replication or your production environment. You can still run a test failover on a specific virtual machine and test your VM functionality. The other 2 options, it's going to be the live failover. So when you do the cutover operations, your source virtual machine going to be turned off, and the machine which is protected by the Azure Site Recovery, that will be activated. So once the machine is activated up and running on the cloud, you can activate the service dependencies such as changing your internal DNS entry, changing your external DNS entry, and if there is any IP address changes, you can replicate those changes back to your respective areas. Those are the typical operation procedures that you have to follow. So the best practice can be, you can document all the procedures as part of your DR operation runbook so that your operation team can easily follow the procedures and activate the DR operations. So from billing perspective, when the machines are in a protection mode, only the charges will be applicable per instance rate. As per the Azure Site Recovery pricing model, there is no compute charges will be applicable. So the compute charges will be applied only for the time you are activating the VM, which is really good thing about the Azure Site Recovery pricing. So there are many customers using Azure Site Recovery as a migration tool. In fact, you can use this tool to migrate your workload from on-premise to the Azure infrastructure. Okay, so that's the short story about Tailwind Traders, how they are protecting their virtual machines using the Azure Site Recovery services. In fact, if you look at it in a very high level, Tailwind Traders have so many sites. They have more than 30 sites spread across different regions. So Each region they may have a different hypervisor. For example, some places they may have a Hyper-V, some places they may have a VMware. In fact, in some places they may have a just a physical server. For example, some branch offices, very small branch offices, they may have like one or two physical servers. So if you look at the Azure Site Recovery supportability perspective, it can support VMware, it can support Hyper-V, it can support the physical server. All you have to do here is you just have to create a recovery services vault on the Azure side, and you can just install the agent on the respective hypervisor or the physical server. Then you have a ability to choose the VM that you wish to replicate back to the Azure infrastructure. So those are the simple configurations that you can easily follow and to protect your virtual machines into the Azure Site Recovery services. So that's bring to an end of the Azure Site Recovery. Now let us move on to the next topic, which is software update management. So we will see how Tailwind Traders is performing the software update management using the hybrid approach. Now, the biggest question is, how does Tailwind Traders ensure that all the machines across their organizations are having the most recent software updates? So if you look at the Tailwind Traders infrastructure, it is really vast and it is spread across multiple locations, multiple environment, and some machines are running on the Azure, some machines are running on the on-premise, even some machines are running on the different cloud service providers. So also Tailwind Traders currently having multiple management tools to patch the servers, track the status. It's really vast, but they have multiple tools, but then they really don't have a real single pane of glass to get the comprehensive status for all the software updates and for the all the servers. Let's quickly look at some of the common challenges that Tailwind Traders are facing with respect to the software update management. So some of you may think, why don't they just use the WSUS solution to patch the servers across the organization? Yes, so WSUS is great, but it works only for the Windows, not for the Linux. You know that Tailwind Trader organization have the Windows servers, Linux servers. It's really a mixed environment. Also, they like to have a ability to determine the update compliancy, and they like to have a centralized deployment solution for the software updates. So those are some of the common challenges that Tailwind Trader organizations are facing at the moment. Now let's see how Azure Update Management is going to solve these problems in the coming slides. So what Azure Update Management does is that it does check if all the servers machines are up to date. It really doesn't matter if they are running on the Windows or Linux or Azure or on-premise or any other locations. You can also deploy the software updates from one console, which is Azure Update Management. Also, you no need to maintain any third-party products or any other products to manage the software updates across your organization. So Azure Update Management can meet all your requirements with respect to the update management, regardless of the server operating system or where they run. Let's quickly have a demo and explore more on the Azure Update Management. In this demo, I am going to demonstrate how to enable the patch management solution for your virtual machines. So let's go back to Azure portal, and here we are inside my automation account, and you see here there is an update management, and this is the place where you can find the update management solutions. You can also see here I have joined a machine, Azure Virtual Machines, Azure VM1, which is already joined to the update management, and I see the status is compliant. You can also add Azure Virtual Machines. Also, you can add a non-Azure Virtual Machines from this console. Let's see how Tailwind Traders is going to add the machine into the update management from Windows Admin Center. To connect your machines to the update management, let's go to the update and then click on the update now. So once you click on the update now, this is going to ask Azure details. So basically you have to link your Azure subscription in this wizard. You have to choose your subscription, resource group, automation account. So in case if you have an existing one, you can use the existing one. In case if you don't have an existing resource group or automation account, you can create it from this wizard. I'm going to choose the existing one because I do have an automation account. I'm going to choose my existing one, and let's set up this. This is going to take few seconds, and then the machine will be joined to the update management. And once the machine is joined, you see it from the update management console, and this is going to show the compliance status. And then going forward, you can push the update from the update management console. I see this is complete. Now let us go back to the Azure portal and see if the machine is reported into the Azure Update Management. So I'm just going back to the Azure portal, and this is my Azure portal automation account, and I see here Windows Admin Center, the WAC machine is showing as a non-compliant. The reason this is showing as a non-compliant because we haven't scheduled any updates. So let's schedule update deployment, and this is going to open up update deployment wizard. Let's set up this. Here you can do the necessary configuration such as operating system type, whether it is Windows or Linux, and target machines. In fact, you can group it in case if you wish to group the bunch of machines based on the branch offices or based on the certain criteria, you can definitely do it. I'm going to select the particular machine, individual machine, and then you can select the update classifications. Also, you can configure the schedule. If you wish to push the update on certain schedule, you can do it from here. In case if you wish to configure any pre-deployment or post-deployment scripts, which you can do it from here. Finally, you have a reboot options. You can configure the reboot requirements if required. So now let's create the schedule. As soon as you create the schedule, we can go back to the update management and look at the deployment schedule. So let's go back to the deployment schedule and see if the deployment schedule is updated here. I see there is a deployment schedule which is created for the on-premise server, and I see this is updated. Now let's go back to the history and see if this is triggered. This is successfully triggered. And now let's click on this and deep dive further and see how many updates got installed on the computer. I see Windows Update successfully installed on one computer, and there are 3 updates got installed as part of this schedule. Let us go back to the machine compliance status and see if the compliance status have been changed. That's real quick. We have successfully performed the software update for the on-premise computers using Azure Update Management from the Windows Admin Center. So now Tailwind traders can follow the similar approach to onboard all on-premise Azure Windows servers, even Linux servers, into the Azure Update Management to effectively manage the software updates using the hybrid approach. Let's quickly wind up Azure Update Management with some additional information. Azure Update Management supports Windows and Linux platforms. You can deploy software updates into on-prem servers as well as Azure virtual machines. You can also have a custom approval criteria. You can control your deployment schedule. The great thing about Azure Update Management is that you can manage everything from a single pane of glass. From compliance perspective, it also does the compliance scanning. For Windows machines, every 12 hours it does check the compliance against the Microsoft updates. For Linux machine, every 3 hours it does check the compliance against the local repository or public repository. Generally, Azure Update Management leverages the components like Microsoft Monitoring Agent, PowerShell desired state configuration, Azure Automation, Hybrid Runbook Worker. Those are the components typically involved when it comes to the Azure Update Management. From the supportability perspective, Azure Update Management supports Windows Server 2019, 2016 and all down-level operating system until 2008. From the Linux perspective, it also supports Red Hat Linux, SUSE Linux, Ubuntu Server and CentOS and all other flavors. If you notice here, we don't support Windows 7 and Windows 10. Those are the client operating system. So Azure Update Management doesn't support client operating system because Azure Update Management, it's mainly for the Windows and Linux server operating system. And also it's a great orchestration platform when it comes to the server patch management activities. This is Azure Stack integration. Azure Update Management also supports Azure Stack virtual machines. You see here, they also show here as Azure virtual machines. So finally, we covered all the aspects of Azure Update Management. Now you know how Tailwind traders can manage their software updates using the hybrid approach. Let's move on to the next challenge which Tailwind traders is facing, which is file server management. So this is their next concern. How does Tailwind traders make sure that their file servers are replicated and they have enough capacity and they are prepared for the backup and disaster recovery operations? So managing on-premise file server infrastructure, it is not very easy. Also making sure that you are backing up data regularly, which is adding again additional complexities. In case if you get into any issues on the disk in terms of the hardware failure, then again this is going to create another disaster. So many organizations have the DFS solutions. You can sync your file server into another node, or you may have a file servers in a cluster that may temporarily solve the problem, but then the underlying problem remains the same. You have to manage the large infrastructure. You have to still worry about the backing up the data and disaster recovery operation and so on. So Tailwind traders always wanted to do it in a better way. So they like to adopt new technologies. They like to solve their problem using the Azure File Sync hybrid approach. In this section, we will see how Azure File Sync is going to help Tailwind traders to address these common challenges. This is the conceptual architecture of Tailwind traders file server infrastructure. So before we look at the current infrastructure, we should have a clear understanding of Azure File Share and Azure File Sync. Let us understand what is Azure File Share. The Azure File Share is a fully managed file share in the cloud that can be accessed via SMB protocol. Also, it can be accessible via REST APIs. So you can simply create an Azure file share just going to the Azure storage account, and you can simply create an Azure file share. So once the share is created, you can map this as a network drive on the client machines. In fact, you no need to maintain any on-premise file server solution. You can just use the Azure file share to replace your on-premise file server infrastructure. So Azure File Share is the serverless file server solution, and some of the great benefits by using the Azure File Share is that it's very easy to set up and it is really secure, and also it's massively scalable and it is giving the great performance. So the next question you may be asking, then why do we need file servers? So this is why you need to understand Azure File Sync. So Azure File Sync will help you to centralize your file share into the Azure files while keeping the flexibility, performance and compatibility of an on-premise file server. Let's deep dive further. So let's take an example of Tailwind traders. Here we have one file server located in New York and two file servers located in Seattle. On the cloud, we have configured Azure File Share, and which is a serverless file share solution. So using the Azure File Sync, you can sync your on-premise file server into the Azure File Share. So there are two scenarios. You can use Azure File Sync just for a migration. You can just use Azure File Share as a target file share. You can plan for a decommission of your on-premise file server infrastructure. Just in case you are not happy with the performance, or you don't have a sufficient bandwidth, or if your users are feeling some slowness while accessing the file share, you can still maintain your on-premise file share just to improve the flexibility and performance. So from the compliance and data protection perspective, you can just configure the backups, retention policies on the cloud file share. You really no need any configurations or any worry about the managing their on-premise file server. Just in case if your on-premise file server crashed, it's completely out, you can simply plug your new hardware. Azure File Sync will automatically bring all the files back from the Azure File Share. You do not require to perform any recovery procedures on the on-premise file server. So when you use Azure File Sync, you can leverage the cloud tiering. Cloud tiering is an ability to offload your unused files from your file share from hot tier to the archive tier or cold tier, so that you can optimize your storage space on the hot tier. So the good thing is that users will be able to see the files as if the files are located, but actually the files will be moved to the different tier. So the reason they are seeing the files because it maintains the metadata. In case if there is any call for the particular files, the system will automatically retrieve the file from the cold tier or archive tier to the hot tier. So that's all about the cloud tiering. From the configuration perspective, you can just define if the files are not being used for 30 days, you can move it to the respective tier. So those are the simple configurations that you can very easily do it from the Azure portal. So the other advantage here is you can activate multiple on-premise file server into the one central location, which is Azure File Share, and you can activate the Azure backup on the Azure File Share. Those are the quick brief about Azure File Sync and Azure File Share. So let's move on to the demo. Let me quickly brief you what we are going to do in this demo. We have two file servers. One is located in New York, the other one is located in Seattle. So both are syncing with Azure File Share. Unfortunately, the Seattle one had a disk failure, so we have rebuilt a new machine. And what we are going to do here is we are going to register the Seattle file server with Azure File Share. And let's see how easy to register the file server and how easy to configure the file sync and cloud steering and replicate back those information back to the on-premise file share. Let's see it in the action now. This is the file server which is located in New York location, and you can note this desktop background which is green. And I see here there is a file share which is file share 01, and there are some folders, and there are some folders like super important files, IT engineering, IT marketing, IT sales, and so on. So let us go back to the Azure file share and show you the configuration. You see here there is a sync group which is Tailwind Traders file server. So sync groups contains the file share and the registered file server. So let's open the sync group, and here you can find the server endpoints and cloud endpoints. The cloud endpoints represents the Azure file share and the server endpoints represents the on-prem file share. You see here there is a file share path which is c:/fileshare01. So let us look at the Azure file share. Let's get into the Azure file share. This is the file share TTF file share 01 which is linked to the on-prem file share. You see here you can find all the folders that are syncing here, and I see here super important files, Tailwind Traders Engineering, Tailwind Traders Marketing, Tailwind Traders Sales, all such files. It's actually coming from the on-premise file server that we have seen here. Let me create a new folder on the New York file share and see if this is replicating back to the Azure file share. The folder 1 I'm creating here, and let me go back to the Azure file share and see if this is, let me do the refresh. Yeah, I see here the folder 1 got replicated here. This is exactly functioning the way it should work. So now let me go back to the Seattle server, and we just reinstalled the operating system and we just created the file share. Now what we are going to do here is we are going to register this server into the Azure file share. Now this is the fs02.tailwindtraders.net, and note this desktop background which is blue. Let us go back to the Windows Admin Center and try to access the Azure File Sync button from the Windows Admin Center. Now we are into Seattle file server which is fs02.tailwindtraders.local, and we are going to register this server into the Azure file share. To register this as a server endpoint, we are going to Azure File Sync. In fact, you have some help videos, you can look at it here, and I'm going to deploy the agent. This is the sync agent, and this is going to get installed on this machine, and this is going to take a couple of minutes, and then the deployment will get succeeded. So once the deployment is complete, now we can configure the storage sync service. I see this is complete. Now we can configure the storage sync service. The storage sync service can create the sync group. The sync group basically contains the Azure file share and the on-premise server endpoints. So I just have to provide the subscription details, resource group, and the sync service name, and then the server will get registered into the Azure storage sync. So I'm just providing all the necessary Azure dependencies, and let's just move on to the register server. And this is just going to take few seconds, and then the registration will be successful. So once this is done, then the FS2 server will show as an endpoint. Now we can go back to the Azure file share and add this server as a second endpoint. So let's go back to the sync groups and try to add the second endpoint and add server endpoint, and you just have to specify the FS2 here. Then now the registration is complete, so this is displaying here. Also, you can configure the cloud steering from this wizard. All you have to do here is just easily specify the dates. So I'm specifying 60 days, which means if the files are not being used for 60 days, that will be automatically moved to the another tier. Just configuring now. Yes, so now the second server is provisioned. Now as soon as the sync is complete, you see all the files will be replicating back to the on-premise file shares. You see here, this is the blue background which is sitting in the Seattle, and I see here the files have replicated back. Now let's create a new folder here, which is folder 2, and see if this is replicating back to Azure file share and the New York file share. Let us go back to the Azure file share and see if this is working. Refresh. Yes, I see here the folder 2 got updated. Now let us go back to the New York file share and see if this is getting updated. Let's refresh here. Yeah, see, this is exactly working as expected. So in case if you have any failure on the New York or Seattle or any other file server for that matter, it's very easy. I mean, you just need to plug the new servers and just have to reconfigure the sync services. Everything will get automatically established. Yeah, so this is the great example of Azure File Sync and the Azure File Share, and Tailwind traders can now follow the similar logic across multiple locations. Let's quickly summarize what we have learned in this module. First, we discussed about the Azure Site Recovery. I am sure you will have a greater understanding about how to set up the DR solution from the Windows Admin Center using the hybrid approach. Later, we discussed about the Azure Update Management, and in this time we discussed about how to onboard the client into the Azure Update Management from the Windows Admin Center using the hybrid approach. Finally, we discussed about the Azure File Sync. Here we talked about how easily you can replicate your file server back to your Azure file share to have a centralized file share solution using the hybrid approach. So those are the few components to address some of the common challenges that Tailwind trader organizations are facing today. In fact, you can use the hybrid approach for the many other aspects. For example, you can leverage the hybrid approach to monitor your infrastructure using the Azure Monitor workloads. You can also use the Azure Backup as a centralized backup solution for your all backup and recovery requirements. Having that said, I like to leave a closing note. With the power of Azure Cloud and Windows Admin Center, you can solve all your hybrid challenges.